Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, one of the bigger stories that came out of the Olympics, or that was sort of hidden by the Olympics, is that the two leaders from Russia and China, Putin and Xi, had a meeting. And it seemed to be a very positive meeting. And they're coming together. And, this is one of the things that has to happen for World War III to happen, right? So we'll get into that in just a moment. Let's watch this wonderful presentation by CNN, where the truth goes to die. Right?
Robin, what do you make of this show of unity by Putin and Xi? Does a Putin-Xi partnership pose a big threat to the U.S.?
It does. For 30 years since the end of the Cold War, the world has witnessed a kind of tripolar world where you had Russia, China, and the United States to different degrees dominating the international landscape. Now you find that in this sweeping 5,000-word statement, China and Russia, led by the two most influential, powerful autocrats in the world, backing each other up, not just on the immediate issues of pushing back against NATO expansion in Europe or the one China policy that would basically endorse China's absorption of Taiwan. This deals with a myriad issues of the future. It deals with security of nations. It deals with spheres of influence, the political model for the future. It very pointedly said there is no one model that works for the world when it comes to democracy.
So if you look at the top rankings in the world, the military rankings in the world, of course, the United States is number one. We spend more money than anybody. But China has jumped Russia to number two. Russia is number three. And Germany's a distant fourth, right? Based in, every measurable metric. And they're not going to probably help with a world war between China and Russia and the United States. Britain will probably, but only, in a small way. Japan won't, and France won't, and South Korea. So, maybe. But if they come together, and this would also involve North Korea, because China and North Korea are allies, then we would have a substantial world war. But China by itself versus the United States, that wouldn't happen. And Russia by itself wouldn't happen either. But China has a hold economically on the United States as well, and Russia has extensive cyber warfare. So between the two of them, they could take down America. It's just that simple. It could easily happen.
There was a lot of kind of hypocritical language in terms of democracy and human rights and so forth. But this was a profound signal to the United States specifically, to the West in general, and to the idea of democracy broadly, that these two nations are going to team up. Now, it's an unnatural alliance in many ways, but they can wreak havoc if they really push forward on this agenda.
What CNN doesn't understand, or, they've lost the ability for critical thinking skills and being journalists and being, real news, is that World War III is not only possible, but it's inevitable. Like, I've known about this for a while, and I still don't really think it can happen, right? It's just something that is unimaginable because we don't know what it's like. We don't know what it's like to be invaded in America. We don't know what it's like to not be the number one country. And, all around the world, unless you've had a war on your home soil or whatever, is going on in terms of trauma in your situation, it's hard to imagine World War III because it hasn't happened yet, right? Like, it's hard to imagine dying because every moment of your life you've been alive, right? Unless you've had some near-death experience or you died and came back to life or something, or you just had some recent trauma, or you've had, diseases or something that you've had in your life where you almost died. It's hard for you to imagine dying, right? Because it's just like, I've been alive my whole life, right? Like, it's all you know. Being alive is all you know, right? And then once you die, it's over in terms of your consciousness of that life. And so, like, people don't really think they're going to die in some way, right? Like, we know we're going to die, but, like, it's hard to believe, right? And it's hard to believe that World War III is going to happen. And, just the way things are going, it's hard to believe that there won't be food in the grocery stores. Now, after COVID, it's more realistic. It's more, something we've experienced. And so unless something's happened to you, it's hard to believe it's going to happen, especially when it's some kind of big, huge event like World War III. But here are the factors going into it. The divine beings that run the universe have been preventing World War III from happening. And at some point in the near future, they're going to want it to happen, right? It's going to be a necessity to move everything forward in terms of, the spiritual evolution, reducing the population, and bringing about a worldwide change in terms of humans' relationship to God. And so once the divine beings are fine with or ready for World War III to happen, then there'll be nothing preventing it from happening. The leaders of our world and the people behind them, the real power behind them, are completely insane. And, they are in some ways wanting World War III. I mean, some of them, there's always disputes and things like that, but they're not going to present any problem in terms of World War III happening. And I said this before, whenever you build any sort of weapons, any invention or machine, you're going to want to use it, right? It's just, how human beings and men are specifically. Like men build something and they build a toy, they have to play with it. And that's happened over and over in wars when they've built weapons of wars. So up until now, the only thing preventing World War III is these divine beings and the fact that America is, just so far above all these other countries on a military level that Russia and China would never challenge the United States. But now as a duo, and the United States being so weak from the last wars, right? See, the problem for America is that our wars are what made us rich, especially World War II. What made America the number one country was World War II, especially World War II. But all these wars, World War I, all the wars that America's fought have increased America's wealth and capital, and then all the other things that go with it, right? And we've done well from wars, and we are a military-industrial complex country. The only war that kind of sucked for America was Vietnam, and there took a 30-year period to sort of, allow that to wash away, 30, 40-year period almost, 35-year period. But then the wars of the 2000s, the war with Iraq and Afghanistan, the military action in Libya, and to some extent in Egypt, and then the attempted regime change in Syria, it was all, based in economic collapse. America's economy was going to collapse. And when that happens, we fight a war. Like wars delay or solve all of our economic issues. And so America now is facing economic collapse. Americans have no stomach for war after all those wars and the way Afghanistan ended in a disgrace. But we really need a war. We need a war to keep on going and to deflect from the inevitable economic collapse that's going to befall not only America, but the world. And so America is, hell-bent on creating some sort of conflict with one of these larger countries that's more of a threat and could do things to America that would create, a reason for us to go to war. Like if a country bombed America as opposed to, whatever kind of, BS reasons they had to go in for these Arab Spring wars and things, to keep the economy from collapsing. But if Russia did something on American soil, or China, or there was legitimate reasons like, China cut off, economic sanctions against America or something like that, and we weren't able to, Walmart was half empty, then Americans might conceive of war, right, if things were really bad here. And so that's what America seems to be pushing for, the leadership, because they have no other choice. And China and Russia would have maybe backed down 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but now they see an opportunity, at least for China, to become number one, and Russia to become number two, right? And America to drop down. And, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And so China's been gearing up for inevitable conflict with America. and it's been prophesied and all these things. And so China and Russia coming together is one of the things that has to happen for World War III to happen. And there are a lot of other things happening, right? The Native Americans have this thing like about the white buffalo and, rare albino creatures showing up. I mean, there's these prophetic type of things that have been happening all over the world that are like end times type of stuff that's been prophesied in so many different religions and cultures all around the world. Of course, the prophecies that I've read in the Whispers of the Brighter World and my Journey series, and this sort of ending of our civilization, and atomic war, nuclear war, is a part of it. And we're heading for it. And this isn't good news, certainly. Whatever has to happen for what's best, whatever's part of God's plan. Sure, I agree with all that. But World War III isn't going to be pleasant, right? And the fear, the level of panic and things that's going to come from it, I don't think it's going to happen this year. But as you'll see as things sort of open up that it'll happen in the near future, right? That this is something where the need for a changing of our civilization and culture will open up the inevitable conflict between Russia and China and America and these other countries, right? It'll be a true world war with eventual nuclear war and things, and that'll change the whole structure and everything about human life and animal life on this planet. And it'll wreck the world in such a way that people will, being born and souls coming in, and there'll be less people here, so there'll be less low vibratory souls, and the higher developed souls will realize how bad we screwed up, and there'll be a redemptive movement, and some, this is why I talk about the heartfulness meditation, people connecting to God internally, and a sort of a spiritual awakening, but a material, it'll be a dark material time, right? And the events are just all lining up, and this is part of it. It's just the initial part, but the fact that they're coming together, Russia and China coming together, is something that needs to happen if there is going to be a World War III. And, like I said, I think it's inevitable. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.